Hey everyone, welcome to the Ockham Brothers podcast. I'm Josh and I'm here with my co-host. Again, I like that word co-host, I'll use it again. Michael and Chris. And we're going to have a podcast with some good friends of ours today.
Yes, we've got Peter and Cristie Robertson with us today. Thank you guys for joining us.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
How was it?
No, we love you guys. You're more than just ministry acquaintances to us. You're really good friends, and we met Pete through Cole Stringer,
Who was on the show.
Who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, yes. And Pete has had the privilege of travelling with Cole as well. So we
yes, the privilege.
The privilege.
Word. Depends on our definition of the word. But
No, we went through all the on that podcast with Cole. We went through all the things that we've been through with him,
All the natural disasters.
that we've been in with him. So left us in New Zealand, and
We may have blamed him for COVID-19
we
too.
did too. Yeah, we did that.
Actually, I think it was every disaster for the last 20 years.
Every disaster for the last 20 years, we sort of threw him under the
I
bus.
think there could be some pretty strong evidence that could be true.
We sort of just stumbled across it halfway through the show. We're like, oh, it's been a lot of natural disasters. Maybe this is also one of the ones you've contributed to.
Because he told us he was at one stage looking at going on the
Ruby Cruise.
the Ruby Princess. Yeah,
The Ruby Princess, that's it.
Wow.
There you go, mate.
yeah.
That's the smoking gun you were looking for.
No, but you guys have a awesome worship ministry as well as preaching ministry, and worship ministry is an interesting one because I've travelled along with Cole and you there as well, and it's one of those things that people view very differently. Like, you know, it's almost like, you know, oh, hi Cole, thank you for preaching, and then thanks Peter for singing a couple of songs, you know.
Cole Stringer and band.
Band, yeah.
Yeah. I'm the band for Cole Stringer Ministries.
But it's one of those things, it's just interesting when you see it from the opposite side, that people do have strange ideas on it, and they just think, you know, oh, you just whip out your guitar and play us a couple of songs and, you know, it'll all be good, and that's it.
Well,
you
we've
know?
seen it when Pete and Cristie have come down and as a guest at church.
Yeah.
And you see that transition from, I really like how you guys do it, from leading everyone in worship and then being able to follow that up and transition over to the word and bringing something really important there. And there's like a theme that runs through, a connection. It's not like, okay, we do worship and then we do ministry and they're so split or they're so different that the ministry starts from the worship. And I really like how you guys use that time not to, okay, we're going to do the intro, but to bring the word in that as well. So I think that's such such an important thing to remember.
I think it is too, because I believe there's a destination in a service.
Yep.
I don't think God's up there rolling dice and go, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. And so my heart was always, okay, I can either produce a platform from where the ministry can go, or I can dig a hole. So, like, even though, you know, we've been doing this a long, long time, and, you know, we're all friends, and Cole's like a dad to us all.
Yeah.
But we've joked about his complete lack of musicality. But, you know, so like I stand next to him for too long, and it's like it's like, is that a guitar? I can't even remember what a guitar looks like. It's like drains out of my body. But so some people in that situation would go, well, obviously just leave him to do the word. You do whatever you want with the music, and all will be good. But my thing is, like, I feel like it's more a case of, I start the race like a relay, and I should be handing him a baton. And, you know, so I'll ask and go, well, what are you preaching on? You know, we're obviously praying about what we're going to sing and the atmosphere, because, you know, music creates an atmosphere. It can be huge
Yep.
and vibrant and happy and joyous, or it can be quite reverent and atmospheric and quiet. And so if he's preaching a message on the joy of the Lord or having a powerfully victorious attitude, I don't want to sing songs that are like a funeral dirge. It's just it just doesn't work. So just having that little bit of an attitude of like, even if, if you're listening, some people here listening go, my pastor's got no idea about music. That has nothing to do with it. It's like when you make a decision in your heart, you're going to use your gift to create the greatest platform for ministry. You end up being so blessed by that too. God blesses that. And I've been on the other side of the line too, where it was like, no, I'm just going to do my own thing. You have no idea what you're doing with music. It just doesn't work. God's heart is unity.
That'd be hard for you to do. That'd be hard. I'd imagine that'd be hard for you to do when you go to minister somewhere and you're not doing worship, when, that's the way you think. And then, they're leading the worship. Then you've got to minister, and it's just like, please make it stop.
We do find that really hard. And when we travel to different churches, we notice a real divide between the music and the preaching. So if we are at another church and we're not doing the music for some reason, which I always find odd, because that's who we are.
Well, I know in our case, we love it because it's like Abby's like, yes, one Sunday that I don't have to do worship. I can actually enjoy worship one Sunday, and
it gives the music team a chance to just sit in it. Because a lot of churches, the teams are on all the time. If we do go somewhere and either Peter's preaching or I'm speaking, and the music team don't even ask us how we want it, like where we're taking it. And if they take it somewhere, that is really hard for. I personally find Peter's a lot more seasoned at this, so he's pretty much good all the time.
That's a very polite word for old.
I struggle to speak out of if the music team have taken it somewhere where it's not where I needed to be. Do you know what I mean? Is that what you're asking? Yeah. So and we really do see the huge divide in that. And so that's really on our hearts to make sure if we're ever anywhere and we're just doing the music, we speak to whoever's preaching. What are you feeling? What are you preaching on? How would you like that to finish off? So that is a big thing of ours, to make sure that the whole service is in unity. It's not the music and then the preaching, or it's the whole thing. Yeah.
How close do you think that the worship, the music is to worship? Is the music there to set the atmosphere of worship? Because we know we can worship in many different things, not just through singing praises. Sure. How close connected are music to worship? Is it setting that atmosphere, like you say, that joy atmosphere if you're heading down that way, or like that really reverent sort of setting? How should we set that up? Is that something that we create, or is that something we follow more than, if that makes sense?
That's actually probably a more complex question than
I know, you
think, because it can be different for different ministries. Like I find personally, when I'm ministering in music with a preacher, I try and find what is the best, draws it out of them. Like I know for a fact, like there are ministries, like Brother Kenneth Copeland, the message is vital in the song. And so if I'm doing anything with the Copeland's ministry, I'm very, very, very super aware of the words that are being sung, because that's super, super important to them. And that's great. I mean, that's their gift. Their gift has been about the power of words and stuff like that. When I did some stuff with the Hagans many years ago, they were very much a certain atmosphere was what they felt more comfortable ministering out of. And so I remember one night I wasn't on, and I felt for the worship leader that was, because they were doing like a more Benny Hinn sort of really quiet, hallelujah, lift your hands sort of thing, really atmospheric. And Pastor Hagen, he prefers a very joyous, victorious sort of sound when he's ministering in a healing altar call. Mm-hmm. So he actually physically stopped the worship and got Mrs. Hagen to tell them, no, sing this song. Mm-hmm. Because that's where he felt he could really flow from. And I had no problem with that. One of the reasons I started in ministry was because Cole was so struggling. He was doing a lot of Holy Spirit meetings, Holy Ghost meetings, and he found that where he was going to minister, they were just taking it in such a direction different to where he felt to start. He'd lose half his meeting trying to get them back to where he felt he should have been able to start from. Yeah. So then he would take me and, Yeah,
we're still on. You just can't see us at the moment.
Sorry?
We're still on. We're just hiding. You can't see us at the moment.
Are you trying things?
Just turn the lights off. It's all right.
Well, you are brothers. I know that sort of brotherly angle.
Yeah.
I'm adopted. It's all right.
Chris is like a...
He's an adopted brother.
Yeah.
So it comes down to okay, Josh, you're a pastor.
Yep.
You know what works for you. And God, we're all individual. I love the different expressions of worship. I actually really enjoy it. And so I would never say, okay, this is the way you got to do it. This is the way, because everyone's different. I know that when I'm ministering or Cristie's ministering, we know how we want it to be.
Yeah.
So as a pastor, whatever you're ministering, it's about music's about communication. Great musicians communicate through music. So I would say to pastors, just develop that sort of relationship where you can express how you feel you need it to be. Like we don't have it as much in Australia, but in America they have a lot of like T.D. Jakes. He'll have his organ player playing behind him even when he's preaching.
Yep.
If you ever watch that preaching, a lot of people don't take notice of it, but those guys follow the dynamic of his speaking. Mm-hmm. So when he's really, and he's really, really going for it with his Southern gospel preaching, which is awesome. We love it. The guy is like really up there, like with his music, following and like it's all cohesive. Mm-hmm. And then if he gets down to a really soft and tender moment, the guy pulls it right back.
Yep.
And
So it's both. Like you asked, is that something we create or is it something we follow?
Yeah.
It's both.
Mm-hmm. I think that when Peter said that about how it's communication, I think that's what some people don't really understand. They think that the song's maybe set, and even though it's written before the service started, it's still communication, much like a sermon is. Mm-hmm. And the pastor's job is to communicate. That communication has actually started from the start of the service. It's not maybe just to get us into an atmosphere, which I myself has probably fallen into that before, that, maybe not seeing the communication side of it, that we can be receiving from something from the start rather than just getting us to a place to receive. If that makes sense. Yeah. Maybe I've seen that before, that it was to get us to a place to receive rather than seeing it as a place to receive straight away. And seeing that communication in the worship and not that it's just something that's been pre-written and that communication is going to start after that. Yeah. And I think we can fall into that trap a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we spend so much time doing when we do music seminars with churches, is explaining to the team, you're here to support, because there is so much of a view that this is our job and that's your job. And we don't see it like that. We're all here for one purpose.
To work as a team.
Yeah, I know.
Totally. And for us, we can. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was just saying. Even I know, like my experience mostly is production, and I know probably over the last 10 years, the emphasis on the communication of the message through the lights, through the sound, through the that has grown so much that there is something more than just turning the speakers on or making those lights green, so it's that conducting all the way through to preach one message. So it's it's good when the whole team sings that. That's what you were just talking about with the seminars you do. Once you can get the whole team onto the page of the message you're trying to push through as a team, it's amazing the difference that makes through it, you know, from being just pushing a button to actually producing a service. So it's very, very important.
Like we serve in our own home church and we will ask who's preaching, what are you preaching on? Is there a specific, like we have our set list and we practice it with the band, and on Sunday morning when whoever's preaching comes in, we say, is there a specific song you would like? Or what do you want to finish on? And if they don't, if we know it, which Peter knows everything, so we do.
But he tells you that all the time, does he, Cristie?
Just ask him.
I know everything.
You know, but we'll have something planned if they don't have something specific. But that's we always ask that. Yeah. You know, we're a supporting role. So.
Do you ever get? Can you play Beyonce?
I make it. Sorry, what was that?
I said, do you ever get? Can you play Beyonce? I haven't heard that.
That's my dream to have.
You ain't ready for this, Jelly. Anybody is.
My dream is to have the Beyonce fan and just belt out a song. Doesn't usually happen in church.
Mrs. Robertson's when we come back to July,
we'll see if we can get it sorted.
Fan, all right, and a glitter cannon.
A glitter cannon.
I wouldn't joke. We can do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chris is here at the moment. That is possible.
He's the one. I make a big point that when I do the seminars and stuff, that when we do them, that I make sure that the sound team and the production team know that they are equal parts.
Oh, yeah.
In some ways, sometimes even more important. We can look to the stars on
Don't
the stage.
tell him he's more important. Please don't tell him.
You only sound as good as the sound man.
It amazes me.
We've learned that.
Yeah, some places.
A buddy of mine who was a huge music mentor to me, he was supporting Glenn Shorrock, who was the lead singer of the Little River Band, and
that's only just around the corner.
That wasn't funny.
So he was doing
fun
sport
fact.
act.
Yeah.
And like I was just sitting in the sound desk mixing my mate, who was just he was just doing the opening act. He was just a keyboard, piano player and singer. And then the band comes on. They start playing, and the sound guy got distracted and walked off.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the band came on, I'm there, like I saw them 2 nights in a row. Now, the sound guy was there first night, and it was just pristine because these guys were the best players in Australia. And the second night I'm thinking, man, these guys are not on it tonight. That sounds terrible. Next thing, the sound guy comes screaming in the side. He must have just missed the cue of the start and starts working frantically on the desk. Next thing you know, they're pristine.
It's all back,
You can like Cristie said, we can sing we could be the best singers in the world. We could be the best players in the world. The sound team create that. They mold that. I find, when I'm mixing in a studio, I'll spend hours and I could mix the same players and the same song and the same singers, everything. And the way I could mix it 100 different ways and it sounds like 100 different songs. So the production and sound, it's a really important thing. I'd like to say it. I don't want to offend anybody because I know that every church has to.
You never do that.
No. Kyle and I should get on TV, then we could offend more people. But, and churches have to work with sometimes the best they've got and volunteers, and we thank God for all the local heroes who serve in the house each week. But I say to churches, okay, you believe God for the best sound equipment. You've got the best production equipment. You've got an incredible band, incredible singers, and a legally deaf bricklayer on your sound. What is the weak link in the chain? And it sounds funny. I said that at a ministers' conference once when they wanted me to talk plainly about music and worship. And it was nearly a light bulb moment. Some people spend, people go, I wanted to, why we should have this best, better than the world. And I believe we should have excellence. I really do. But I don't want people to feel condemned if they don't have that now.
If they're not excellent.
They're not excellent.
It's in process.
Jesus still loves
you.
Jesus still loves
you if you're legally deaf bricklayer.
Yeah. But, to all our legally deaf bricklayer listeners.
We just lost them.
Yes, that's right. That's right. The Yocken brothers are going to be sued by every legally deaf bricklayer. It's going to be a class action. People spend their whole lives like working to perfect that craft. So I don't say that to scare anyone, but to realise that it's really important. And it just doesn't, just because you know that fader affects the volume of the guitar or the vocal, that doesn't mean you know everything to do about production and mixing.
Yeah.
So, we can all upskill, and I encourage people to do that.
Be better at your job, sound people.
Just be a better person. Be a better person.
People is his bugbear.
Oh my gosh.
Be a better person.
Soundmen and drummers. And the funny thing is, one of my best friends in the whole world, has a sound professional consulting company, has sold like sound gear to Lionel Richie. So I'm not talking about you, mate.
So Peter's advice is to upskill from bricklaying.
Yeah.
Hey, you can lay brick. Just don't be legally deaf.
Don't be deaf.
No, but it is one of those. It's a bit like door greeters, sound desk guys. It's like, you're available, aren't you? Just push this up when I get up on stage. It's like
that's the time when got the whiteout on the marks, or you just push it up to where the marks are.
That line. I've drawn a line for you.
That's not how it works.
How hard is it?
We see that a lot.
Chris can do it. Anyone can do it.
I knew you were going to go there. I'm just thinking any minute now it's going to go there.
Oh yeah, we even noticed, I know enough to get myself in trouble, which is bad. But you can completely hear it. Then Chris gets on the desk and he's like, "Oh, we just tweaked this and that," and it's like, I can't hear it. I can't hear the difference. He's like, "You can't hear the difference in that."
Yeah,
nah.
Cole Stringer's production workshop would be very quick. It would be result an on and an off switch.
Can
I have an amen or what?
There you go. Oh my gosh, he's hiding under the table.
Oh yeah. We kept you from last time.
Yeah. We've got a few.
Yeah.
We got little. We gave Chris buttons, which was dangerous.
I have to resist as long as I can.
With getting back to working with the team, onto a more serious note, because this is such a serious podcast. But
and you're not,
because I've known you have done also just traveling around where you spend one Sunday at a church at a time, and like you've done here, and you're like, is there any direction? And I know that firsthand, and how you a lot of the times you guys minister as well, so you don't have to actually ask me. But when I've also seen you go into a church and help them get for an extended period of time, and help them get things set up as a worship platform, all that sort of stuff, and get them going. When you're doing that for more than just a one Sunday, how much communication do you think between the pastor and the team, and all going in one direction? How much preparation do you normally need for that? Is it just every Sunday morning, or is that something that you can prepare ahead of time to be thinking about? Because I know asking your worship leader to sing a song that morning, which I have done.
You've done
Ask Abby quite a few times.
I'm about to say not just once.
Not just once. That's can be a habit of mine. Can be tough for some people. So how much setup or how much could you do if you had more time? I guess that's the question I really want to know.
Okay, so you're talking from our perspective,
when
we go to churches, or what?
Or from when you spend at a time, at a church for a long time, do you have a lot more communication then? Are we going to do some maybe themes? Are we going to talk on certain subjects for a number of weeks, and then complement that with the worship, or do you just normally just Sunday at a time?
Well, I get there's no blanket answer for that because, like all communication, it's very individual.
Yep.
And I could say the same thing to different churches, and they'll hear different things.
Yeah.
So I find the more time we get with a ministry, the way it's more easier for us is the fact that I can see more how they function, how the team communicate. Like usually we don't have, because we are going church to church, we don't get, say, the insight that we do, say, for instance, in our own church where we know the people. We know, like you know a person and how good communication is not what's spoken, it's what's heard.
Yeah, true.
So, like, if you want to tell me something and tell Cristie the same thing, we're very different in the way we receive communication.
Because I'm normal.
There you go. Yes. There you go. So you learn how best to communicate.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about communication is the majority of communication is nonverbal. So you can I try and tell people to debrief teams, to debrief. And so to create a safe environment where real discussion can happen. I think the beautiful thing about the grace message is it realizes that no matter how we perform, we're equally valuable. If you don't have that revelation, communication is very difficult, because as soon as you communicate and go, hey, this didn't work, you're attacking a person's worth.
Yeah.
And they'll close down or they'll attack.
Get on the
and
defensive.
So there has to be constant reinforcement for a strong team that their value, like you can have I have a bad day. It might just for some reason, I hit a few bad notes that day or bad chords, or I didn't communicate to the rest of the team as clearly as I should have. But my worth's not tied up with that. So there's the groundwork to create a safe place, but and the safe place encourages authentic communication.
It's culture, really. It's what you've sown into your teams. And because when you're putting your gift out there, whether it's your voice or your instrument, you do feel vulnerable. Like I do this all the time, and I feel vulnerable whenever I do it if I'm having a bad day. So I think we see a lot of people that are feeling vulnerable and think we're there to say, what you're doing is not good and here, let us fix it. So, so we're always like going, we're just trying to help you and let's all just get this together. And so sorry, I went off track, didn't I?
No,
that's good.
But it is true. It's a matter of putting it that. So once you've got that, Cristie just says duck out. So once you get that core of safety, and so that's why doing life together is really important. Like I would say to teams, don't make every single event it's all a prayer meeting, or it's all a practice, or it's all this, or it's all that. It's also important to just do life together.
Yeah,
that's
not
really
make
important.
Not make everything about the message.
Those sort of things create the safety to have authentic communication. Like I've known you guys for years. I feel safer to be myself around you than someone I've just met. So that's why these team building exercises, just sometimes doing life, sharing a meal, doing something together is important. Then when it comes to the communication aspect of it, communication require like after a meeting, say, well, why? Okay, the worship leader might go, well, I meant to go to the bridge. We didn't go there. What happened? It can be something so simple. We had line of singers in between the drummer and it's so simple. Or just the maybe they say, well, we were looking at you, but you didn't really communicate. Like, I'm guilty of that. I encourage people to watch my body language when I'm doing. So if I'm wanting to be more expressive in dynamic and volume and stuff, like I'll say my body language is very indicative of where I want the meeting to be. So learn to what. So I've got to communicate that to them. They've then got to give me feedback if they are receiving that. As far as you being a pastor, you've got to. There's a fine line between good communication and micromanagement.
Yep.
And I think one thing to learn is that I think is very powerful is if a pastor needs to develop the communication, the relationship with the team, yes, but with the worship pastor or music director or worship leader or whatever. And so there's a line of communication. It's not just, I don't just communicate to everyone as a pastor. I would say I would spend my time like Jesus. You looked at Jesus, he worked in circles. He had the 70, but then there's the 12, and then there's Peter, James, and John. You know, and there was different forums and levels of communication in those various networks. Obviously, the closer the circle, the rawer the communication could be. Like a pastor might go, "My gosh, that was just the worst music service I've ever had in my entire life." Well, he might be able to communicate that to a very close leader like his worship pastor or someone who he or she has a really strong relationship with, has known for years. They understand each other. But if he or she expressed that to the team, it might destroy the team. So, you know, that's filtered down. It's like, you know, pastor goes to worship pastor. That sucked. Worship pastor goes to team leaders. That was pretty bad. Team leaders go to the rest of the team. I think we can improve a little bit. So it is like I've said sometimes in communication, it's messy. Life's messy. And I'll say to someone like, "Oh, okay, that's great what you did. Have you thought about doing it this?" And I can see by the look on their face, they heard, "I hate you and I hope you die." Their reaction did not match what I said. So
I think you touched on it before.
People.
I think you touched on it before when you were talking about the different ministries you work with too. You know, it was out of experience with them as well, understanding how they communicate. Like when you were saying when you were with the Hagans or with the Copelands, understanding the outcomes they want to achieve can actually help see the communication they are giving. So I know for me, a lot of time, learning the pastor or whoever was actually in charge of that service at the time, learning how they operate can really change the cues you're looking for. Or even as a camera guy, knowing that he usually goes left after he says that, or he usually goes right after he says that. You know, just
that's
time.
Awesome.
So I think
that's
I think
a great example. That is actually a great example. Like I worked with a team. Like, man, well, I did my last Youth Alive album in 2000, and I was old for Youth Alive. Cole's releasing a Barely Alive album in the next year. I don't know what, in our church we had our youth team up, me and Hillsong Young and Free, and I got up and said, "Hello, I'm Hillsong Old and Incumbent." I had just totally got off track. I worked with these guys for years and years and years and years, and so I didn't even need to tell them what I wanted. Like, we knew each other so well that when I would go somewhere, they'd create exactly what I wanted because we'd done life together. And so that's, you know, but it all starts sometimes just asking questions. And I think safety, I would say if you're a musician listening to this and you're going, yeah, but like I said before, my pastor might be musically retarded. I'm PC these days. But when you say that, if you express and you communicate your willingness to serve and your willingness to create the best platform possible for them, that creates trust.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started my ministry with Cole, and I'd always like, what do you want, man? You tell me the song. You tell me how many songs. You tell me exactly when to finish, and I will finish on that dot of that. Now, you could say, oh, well, he's cramping your creative freedom. But that created trust.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it was like, I'd ask him, what do you want me to sing? He'd say, you sing whatever you want. Well, how long do you want me to go? He said, you go however long you want. You can take the whole service if you want. Because there was trust.
Mm-hmm.
And trust takes time. Trust takes sacrifice. And, if you're willing to do that, I guarantee that also the Lord blesses it. It's just a spiritual principle. You know, it doesn't say when everything's perfect and absolutely without fault that the Lord commands blessing. It says where the brethren dwell together in unity. So I tell people sometimes, just even for the sake of unity, you've got to swallow your own pride sometimes. But God always blesses that. Like he'll open doors for you no one else can open, just if that's your heart.
Yeah. I know we've been talking about ministry and worship ministry and things like this, but these are all principles that can be applied to just life. Have you sort of noticed talking about communication, talking about, humbling yourself and all these different things that are really important for us to, it's not just setting up, like you might be listening to them, well, I'm not a worship leader or anything like this. How does, but you can really understand something in this, that developing that community, you can do that in everyday life. And that whole going from just communicating, even listening to these things, you think of it in your own relationships with your spouse or something like that. If you're not communicating, if there's a communication breakdown in that becomes that shift of things begin to get separate, and even talking about for the sake of unity and stuff like that, it works very similar. That you can have this communication breakdown, and even though, like Pete said before, how he might say something to someone, but they heard something completely different, and you're not walking in the same direction or doing that, and that's why doing life together is so important, and creating that community is so important. I think that even now, why everything's so separate at the moment, a lot of that can be just left and pushed aside, that we don't bother communicating anymore. We just think that everyone understands what I'm going through. And I think that we've fallen under that before, that we just think everyone knows I'm having a bad day, so they just have to deal with it, rather than communicating that and helping people to understand that. I think that we can really pick up a lot of things here that we've been talking about, working as a team and things like that, and understanding that we can have that community with those around us, or even those who we come into contact with, if that makes sense. So I think it's been, really cool. I've just been picked up on that, talking about all these different things, not just they're practical things, but they're practical things that can go across the board and not just have to be locked into one certain area. So something I picked up.
Yeah, cool. That's good to know now that you've got a daughter, mate.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, who's learning to communicate? That's certainly something. Yeah, she's communicating even without the words. So, Dad, then a half finger just points at anything, just like I want that.
That's right.
Give me that.
That's right.
So a lot of body language into that one.
Being able to read. What do you want?
Yeah, she says no without saying no. Let me tell you that much.
Yeah.
We're at that stage.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you, because I know that you do preaching ministry as well as the worship, like we mentioned at the start. How did you break that when you go to certain churches and that? How did you break the whole idea of, you're just the music guy, and to then being also someone who can minister as well? Was that a struggle for you, or did that come naturally?
Well, I probably did it the other way. I probably did it back to front.
Yep.
I would encourage anyone to embrace. What I'm trying to say is I don't feel insecure about being thought of as a worship leader.
Yep.
Like, when I first started traveling, I felt like that was like a lower level. Mm-hmm. And when they recognized me as more than that, it's like I'd been
finally made it.
Made it, yeah, promotion. But so when I first started traveling, apart from Cole, I would sing like 1 or 2 songs and then preach for an hour and a half. And it was funny that it just never felt right for me. Mm-hmm. And one day it's like I had a real experience with the Lord and just recognized, wow, I'm called as a worship minister, and so I'm just going to embrace that, and anything else that comes out of that is fine. Mm. And I told Cole, and of course he said, well, hello, Forrest, I've been telling you that. It's very encouraging. We had a very and that's when I changed the name of the ministry from Peter Robertson. It was just Peter Robertson Ministries to Worship Ministries International. And so, yes, we preach, and God has called. We do a lot of youth outreaches, and Cristie has a very powerful ministry to women, and I preach a lot on grace, and but to me, that's an outworking of who I am as a worshiper, and so I went to a church that had me every year since I started, and like this wasn't. I've been ministering for years when I finally decided to do this. Mm. And he said, well, Pete, I'm so glad because literally we got more out of your 2 songs than your hour and a half. And basically said if you'd done it again, you weren't coming back. Now, it wasn't that there was anything wrong with the preaching, but when I embraced the call of who I was, my preaching was more powerful. Mm. And so because I wasn't trying to be something that I wasn't. Mm. So, and I found a lot of people like that. Like you look at in the book of Acts when the apostles said, we can't be waiting on tables. Get us men full of the Holy Ghost to go and basically do administrational sort of things. Mm. Well, out of that came the great evangelist Stephen, and some very powerful ministries because their security wasn't in being accepted for something. They just embraced who they were called to be.
That's the same scripture I used to justify coffee shops, by the way. See, he appointed people to make coffee. It's in the Bible.
Coffee is important, I tell you. Because if you want to hear us minister in the new covenant, you better give me good coffee. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did struggle with it until I just embraced, hey, I'm a worshiper. With the worship, I mean, the Lord gives me a message, but I'm in no rush. Well, we're in a bit of a unique situation because usually we're at least doing some worship and ministry of the word. So I ask people to, unless they say you're doing all the worship and all the preaching, which that happens a lot too, but some might say, we want you to do some worship and some preaching. Well, I say, well, just give me a time and we'll just start worshiping. And if it really goes somewhere, I'm happy to reduce the preaching because I've seen situations where an anointed preach, 10 minutes can be more than a year of Bible school. Like I remember watching some of Brother, Dad Hagen's meetings in the early 90s, and he'd be just flowing in the Holy Spirit, and all of a sudden he'd just stop and he'd talk for 10 minutes. But mate, that 10 minutes changed your life. It just went straight into your heart. And so, for us, I just think we've just embraced. Yeah. We're a worship ministry, and
Pete's just like basically a super humble guy. And I think to answer your question plainly, how Pete got out of doing music to preaching was he has a relationship with so many people like you guys and every airport we're in, Peter knows someone. Pretty much every church we go to, Peter knows someone or has known someone for 20 years from there.
Yeah.
And so people just know from someone else, oh, Pete's preached, and so then they know that. But that being said, we still go to some places now where we just do the music. And I say to Peter, do they know you can preach? Like, have you? He's like, oh, I don't know. And so I'm like, should I tell them that you're really good, you know?
She's not biased at all.
No, but you are really good.
Okay. But
I think it's probably through relationship, and Peter is so secure, and if you get me to do 10 minutes or half an hour, I don't care, whatever you need. But I think the way that we've come out of that box of you're the worship guys is through relationship, really, I think, honestly, right?
Yeah, but again, it comes down to if you've got a heart to serve.
That's what I mean,
right? And people have got us there to bless them and worship, because, preachers are a dime a dozen. Yeah, sorry guys.
No, we've said that to Abby before. It's like one of us can cover the other person if someone's doing something, but it's like Abby's like every week. That's you. Right. That's it.
See, Abby, there's no spares. No. One of them can die. We'll be fine. Cole used to say that to me. He'd say, mate, just like you don't recognise how important a worship ministry is, and he instilled that to me. So I guess that gave me security. And when you have a heart to just be a blessing, and it sounds preachy, but it's just a principle.
Yeah, it is.
God opens doors.
I think the authenticity out of that is so important.
Yeah, that's right.
It's so important to remember.
The most important thing is sincerity. Learn to fake that, you've got it, mate. But it's true. Like people say, well, how did you launch your ministry? How did you get known? And they want like a list of emails. They want to know a marketing strategy. And I'm not against hey, we live in a digital world, and our churches, they have digital marketing teams. I'm totally not against that. But it's the authenticity and impact of the ministry that will open doors for you. Like, for instance, the reason I got into New Creation and got to meet Pastor Joseph Prince and minister in that church was through relationship, through Cole. Not just even that, just the Copelands, I found out people got my CDs. I don't even know how they got them. Like, doors were open. They were like, oh, we love this music. And they're like, I'm like, how did you even get it? How did you even hear of it? Pastors ringing me up going, how did you get into that church? Well, thank you for really believing in that.
Of all people.
The impact of our ministry, that's really wonderful. But we didn't force it. We don't force our ways. We don't, you guys are the same. We don't make pastors' conferences like horse trading events where we're passing out cards. And,
do we have cards?
Well, I don't think we do.
Do we have cards?
Yeah. You see some guys and they've nearly got a T-shirt that says available for ministry.
Standing on the corner. Would you like a card?
Oh, mate.
Whatever works for people, I reckon. Whatever works.
Yeah.
We're all different.
I guess we're all different. But your gift will make a way for you in the end. Yeah. And I think if you've got a heart to serve God, serve people, love people the best you can, that's an act of worship. God will open doors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you guys are seeing it even with your podcast. Like, if you can compare it to, you're reaching people all over the world now. That's a door God opened.
Tens and tens of people. We are just reaching tens and tens.
Billions and billions and billions and billions.
Mate, I thought my very first album was going to make me like, the household name all over the world. I just want you to know it went chocolate. I think that means I had one, my mother had one, and someone else bought one. But after that album, I got a revelation just about, doesn't matter. As long as I'm being obedient to the Lord, I'm trying to be a blessing. That's when the Lord gave me the idea to do my first instrumental. That was the album that Joseph Prince loved that opened the door to minister in his church.
Mm-hmm.
So it's when I dropped the pretense of I'm going to be a star, Darlene Check, she didn't want to worship lead when she was thrust into the spotlight. She was our church secretary with a nice voice. And God made her the most recognisable worship leader in the world. And friends of mine, some of our best friends have spent time with Darlene and said you couldn't get a more normal, down-to-earth, natural person that just loves people. You know?
Yeah. So is the instrumental, does that mean you're a better guitarist than a singer?
For many years, I always thought it was God's way of telling me to never sing again. It was like, seriously. A mate of mine got up in his church and went, this is the album of Peter's we've all been waiting for. He doesn't sing on it. That's why Cristie Robertson's the lead singer now, mate.
That's funny.
I can do the deep brooding looks on the guitar.
Yeah.
And she goes, stop that. You just look creepy.
Constipated. It's a guitarist thing. Like, you're not a real guitarist unless you pull the face.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. John Mayer always looks like he's being electrocuted.
Oh, so that's why he plays so well. I could never figure it out. Got the look.
That's funny.
Yeah. But that's actually, you're talking about going back to communication. I know might be going back in circles. It's just a funny story. A buddy of mine years ago, actually, my mate, we all know Pastor Rob Scott, Victory Life, in Perth. And Rob, like, he was best man at our wedding. Like, we're great friends. And so, again, it's very safe to be real. And he said to me one night after I'd ministered at Victory Life, which is, it's a big church. And a lot of people would go, I've arrived. And he goes, Pete, I recorded you because they've got a TV ministry. I just want to sit down and show it to you. I'm like, I'm expecting them, because they're all so dazzled at your brilliance. Bask in the glory of your countenance. And he said, look, mate, I know you really, you love the Lord and you're just so hungry for the things of God, but to the rest of us watching you, you just look like you're ticked off. and we watched this video, and oh my gosh, I just had this, they're really intense, hungry worship. I looked like I was just ticked off with everybody. And it actually changed the way I worship led, because I thought, it's all about, I'm communicating with my music, I'm communicating with the Word of God, I'm communicating, but my face is telling one, get lost. I
hate this job.
No, I had a worship leader.
That relationship.
You're right.
Sorry, if there's not that relationship for someone to be able to speak.
Yeah.
You, you can't ever grow or get better.
Oh, I haven't forgiven you yet.
No, I was saying we had a worship lecky up in Brisbane, worship leader there, and I had a few times he got a bit upset. I'm like, why is he getting upset at me? So I had to pull him aside. He's like, well, you're always angry when I tell you to do something. Well, I'm not angry. I'm just thinking about it. So it was amazing. It was probably 2 years before we actually had the conversation of why are you always upset at me? It took that long to, well, use just your face. I'm like, oops. this is how it is.
I get that a lot, Chris.
Jeez.
That's funny. The one question that I was going to ask you guys, because you guys are more Cristie than Pete in this aspect, but you guys have, she's like, someone's asking me.
Ready. Asking the professional.
But you guys are in ministry, but Cristie's also got a business as well. And, sort of running those two aspects. Because I know when we first started, it was one of the things that was really frowned upon with us and sort of, in a lot of ways, held us back at the start.
You're not in full-time ministry.
You're not in full-time ministry. Yeah. Yeah, that aspect of, no, unless you're doing this as a 9 to 5, you're not in ministry, you can't be effective. And then it sort of got with us, like now at the moment, all the things that we can do are all because of our business as well, running alongside and helping the ministry. But how do you find that, and how do you sort of juggle the two in that aspect?
To be honest, which is how I roll, as you guys know.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get if you ask me a question. You're just going to get the truth. I really struggle with it, to be honest, at times. There's times when it's hard, especially at the moment. Like, I've got a bookkeeping business. It's a pretty large business. I've got like 100 clients and staff and stuff. And just in this economy that we're in, it's a really tough time. And so for me, when I'm doing like 40 to 60 hours in my business, which is not ideal, and then we have to minister on the weekends, I really struggle.
Yeah.
And Peter will have to kind of just slap me and go, this is what we're doing. This is important. And
I just want everyone to know.
Not in real life. No. Like, he would die.
Yeah.
So, but I do actually, like, it's a different season now. It's hard for me to talk about anything that I'm not in now, but I do actually have to really be careful to protect what is important.
Yeah.
And I have to constantly remind myself what is important. And so sometimes
it's good.
I've always been successful in business, and I asked God a few years ago to take my business to a place where it could support our ministry. And if that was his will, and obviously it was, because my business is just like growing every year. And it is at a point where it can support our ministry. And because what I always wanted was for Peter to be in ministry full time, because I know that's where he should be. That's where our house flourishes, our kids flourish, our relationship flourishes. And so we both have secular jobs,
Yeah.
So Pete's a pharmacist, and so he will do work here and there if we need it. But we are always having to have that talk with each other and say, hey, what's important? What are we going to focus on now? And we we're ministers, and we have to remind ourselves, okay, let's not stress out, and let's just go, okay, God, we thank you that you're going to supply that. And like, whether it comes with being staff, for me, like, okay, God, you can see where I'm at. Please bring me the right staff, or please bring me, help me with my systems or my processes or income stream. And I find that whenever I, like anything, like we all do, when you let it go and let God, it does get a lot better. But I do go through seasons where I have to really take stock and go, okay, am I going to stop taking clients? Am I going to let some go so that I can spend more time on the ministry? Like, what is the thing here? And you know what, to be honest, it's not even the ministry. We're parents as well. So I'm constantly, which I'm sure everyone out there is, especially women, I think, not to, but I think especially for women, we're like, where's the balance here? Is my work, my ministry, my kids, so I'm forever, probably at least once a month, weighing it up and going, all right, what am I doing? And having an honest talk with Peter, whether I'm like having a cry or what am I doing here, And he always just brings it back, honey, just pray about it, in the morning. And I'm like, oh, I need to do this now. And he's like, no, Holy Spirit's never rushed. Just sleep about it. And so, what did you ask me? Is this on the line? Or
No, definitely. Trying to find that balance. But, like, that's something
we're always rejuggling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it is one of those things. But like you're saying, that constant evaluation of the time that it's at. Because, sort of at the start, we were at one stage where it was like, nah, you've just got to go full time and then just do it. And then in just ministry. And then you see the other aspect of it where it puts a real strain on the family. Like, because there's not money there to do stuff or, like it would be, or you can't go get something nice, or because we're just on to the next thing or the next project in the ministry that's the only thing money can go into. And it is interesting, but you're one of the few people that sort of like us sort of run that both and trying to, it is that juggle, I guess.
I think priorities is a big thing. That was a word I took out of that,
Yeah.
what you were saying there, Cristie, about constantly reevaluating your priorities. I think a lot of people have been forced into that during this time where you actually really have to take stock of what is important to you and always have that thing slip down in the list without realizing it. And when you say yes to everything, you have to say no to some things. Like you mentioned family there. I know that's a big one. That's a big one for myself, that if you say yes to too many things, you have to say no to family time then, and things like that start getting in the way. So then you constantly reevaluate that. It may not mean what, the direction you're heading or what he's called you to do is not the direction, but you can reevaluate the whole picture, I think, and maybe take a shuffle on that and see what's really important to you and evaluate what and you can do this in life. People talk about how busy they are. That's a common theme. And so you can allow your job, even if it's not your own business or anything like that, become too big and too large to the point where you it engulfs you. And it begins to control every decision that we make. And I think that when we put God first, we say that a lot, just as like a cliche statement about putting God first. I think that resets our priorities because he has good priorities for us, and his plans for us are to prosper us, and he cares for us, and seeing that he wants our priorities in the right order too. So when we put him first and above what we would consider important, we begin to have a solid foundation to stand on, and then we don't get things so backwards. That will happen if you just don't think about it for a while. Things will engulf you and become bigger than what's really important. So I really like what you shared about how you reevaluate that, and that's so important to do.
I don't think that should ever stop, even if you were in a situation that all you were doing was full time and your entire income was coming from your ministry. I think life is a process of reevaluation of time. I mean, you can be busy in a million different directions. There's no shortage of things in life to do. So it's a matter of, like we've been talking about, priorities, and Cristie's always looking at that, like, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? I would say to any minister that's listening to you today and going, okay, well, what is the balance? That's something only the Holy Ghost and you can come to. It's different in different seasons, different times.
Different seasons, that's
I was so impressed by when we all went and we got ministered to by Pastor Joseph Prince, and people were asking him very, very, very specific questions about how he ran his ministry, and he was very careful not to give like a checklist. Because he said, listen, we're all in different seasons, and we're all, if you do what I do, it might not work for you. And so I know for myself, I would say to any minister who's listening, even if you are working a 40-hour week, you're a full-time minister. When Paul was making tents, he was working all day, and there was no 40-hour week back in those days. I guarantee they were working like 6 days a week, big hours, but he was a minister. That was his calling. That was his job. The business was just an avenue in that season. So God's your source. Like Cristie, we have to constantly refocus. God is our source, not a business.
Yes.
And if we're doing and got the balance right, and don't feel weird that it is a struggle. It doesn't mean that, and when I mean a struggle, I'm not talking about, oh my gosh, it's so horrible. I'm talking about constant reevaluation, shifts and seasons and stuff like that. But our priority is being where God wants us to be, doing what God wants us to do, then he will guide Cristie's business.
And I always struggle because I know my business is blessed because God has blessed it.
Yes.
And so then I'm like, but God's blessed it. Should I just not do it all the time. And so I'll have these things, and then we'll spend an hour practicing worship, and I'm trying to sing a song, and I'm just crying, and Peter's like giving me the look, like, "What are you doing?"
Hey, Chris, that look, see.
And then I'm like, "Yeah, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing." And then Peter's like, "Well, I told you that." I'm like, "Yeah, So.
And she goes, "Thank you, husband. Please correct me at any time."
Yeah.
What a blessing you are.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Just putting those moments in just at the right time when she needs them.
Yeah.
The whole "I told you so." No, I told you so. It's always a good one.
Yeah. No,
but we always try to prioritize our marriage over everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I said to Peter when we started this, I won't do it at the expense of our family.
Yeah.
And I won't let you do it at my expense. I was very clear right at the start. Because I came from a home where my parents were ministers, and I think back then, if you weren't doing everything for everyone else, you weren't really Christian,
exactly. And that's what I was sort of meaning. Yeah. Like, the people have that mindset that that's the only way it can be. And then having that, but at the same time, when you do have both, it's that sort of juggling act, that constant making sure that everything's in balance, that it's not, the ministry is not losing out, but the business isn't either. Yeah.
Different times also for us with like different kids. Sometimes the kids are fine, sometimes they're not, so we'll have to take one of them with us. And and Peter's like, "Oh, we're gonna have to pay an extra flight and stuff," and I'm like, "I don't care." We always said that we wouldn't do it at the expense of our kids. And then sometimes if like Peter, if we have to go separately for an extended period of time, that's when we'll just say no. Because for me, I mean, for both of us, this is not our first marriage. We're a blended family, and I value this relationship so much, and I always want to be really aware. That's my dog being naughty.
Wants to get in on the podcast.
Really aware that this, God put us together, and anything that comes between us is not from God. And God wouldn't make our ministry go in any place that would come between us. So, and it was tough in the first few years because Peter's had such a relationship with everyone, and I'm the new kid on the block, and so it was tough because pretty much I basically said, well, if people don't embrace me as part of you, then people don't get you. We're it. So we're always juggling that as well.
I like Cristie Pete better. That's definitely a better version of Pete.
Thank you, Michael.
Everybody does.
Everybody.
Get past to stop her and just go, "Thank you."
You're all right.
That's the way it should be.
So,
though.
we always really
absolutely.
protect that as well. And we remind each other, like sometimes I'm not doing it and he has to say to me, "Hey, wear what's important." And I'm like, "Yes," and vice versa. So.
I think that's
It
always
can go both ways.
I think that's always a number one priority. Like we were talking about, getting those things in place first. That it puts you in a position to minister. I believe that when you have someone who's on your side, if you're constantly heading across different paths, different directions, then it just becomes harder and becomes more alone, and you're just trying to do things and force something to happen. But when you come together, it just becomes more impactful, and it should always complement what we're doing. Like Cristie, that certainly has happened in your guys' life too. That it comes together, and it should be greater together rather than someone you're holding Pete back, or you got to do all these different things that can be seen, that when you come together it becomes more powerful and not less. That when you prioritize your family, it is actually, I mean, that's what God designed.
I think especially too when one is working secularly and one is doing ministry. I know for me that's been a big deal because sometimes you fight the thought that, oh, well, you're in full-time ministry, I work and I'm paying. you're there as one. I know for me personally is that when I do work and bring income in so we can do ministry, that's me doing ministry. Because like me and Amelia, we're one. We work as one, and without putting that into the basket, it sort of makes everything I do useless. So without her, I'm pointless.
Got to claim Amelia's glory there.
That's it. Yeah, she gets no credit without me. No.
But it is a good thing to see as a team, and how important it is to put family first and to make that unit strong, because God came and the idea of God that Jesus brought was that of a father, and that's the relationship He chose. He could have been anyone or anything to us, but that was the one that He brought. So it's obviously important to Him as well. And so we got to see Him as that first, and that complements then down the line to our family, and He's not going to drive a wedge because we're so busy doing things for Him. Yeah. And that drives a wedge in our relationship or our family unit or anything like that. So prioritizing that is not what we would then perceive as saying no to God. Saying yes to the family. So I think that's very important to keep in mind. And even if it's not in ministry, if it's whatever we do.
Yeah, even if all you have is a job, if it could be the exact same thing. Exactly. That's all you're doing day in, day out.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. It can still, you can prioritize certain things over others. And it's always important to get that right. So I think you guys have done well.
The guy who brought McDonald's to Australia, millionaire so many times over,
Ronald,
more money he could ever spend. Not Ronald himself.
Okay, sorry.
But I read an article where he said, someone said, "Oh man, this is great." He said, "I did this at the expense of my family." He says, "I regret it." He says, "If I had my time over, I'd flick the whole thing." And this is a guy that, in business terms, had achieved the top of the hill.
Yeah.
But he recognised, and I admire him for his honesty, because he was trying to help emerging entrepreneurs, that it's a battle. If you can make anything in life your priority ahead of family or your spouse or God. And so there's people who are too busy to come to church because they're building this empire. And what's the point of it all in the end? Obviously, I believe being the best that we can be is worship to God. It's an expression of thanksgiving and praise. So I want to do everything I can to the best of my ability. But God doesn't destroy the house. While you're doing it. So life is constant, and sometimes there are seasons you just got to look and go, okay, maybe for this season we need to adjust a little bit. Because it's a long term. It's not a sprint. It's not a 100-meter sprint like life. I learned so much from Cole and Jan traveling with them, and I'm so thankful that I watched them go through the ebbs and flows of seasons in their life, and they always prioritized each other. They always prioritized their family. And sometimes that looked slightly different in different seasons depending on the needs. But there was never a question about their priorities. And I'm so grateful that I got to witness that, and I know you guys got to witness that too.
Was there a certain time, because you mentioned before, Cristie, about being a blended family, and I know we've known Pete for a while, that coming into the ministry that was already sort of established in its ways, and then blending the families together, was there some things that had to happen, or maybe some time to communicate and become sort of one direction, one family before? Was that an interesting journey at the start?
It's a very interesting
It was a very interesting journey. And plus also, I was still like a baby Christian, really. I'd been, I'd come back to the Lord for 2 years when I married Peter. And so here's this guy with this ministry that's been established for 20 years and knew everyone, and and I didn't really know who I was, and I didn't know who I was really in the Lord. I was still trying to find my way, and you know, and plus I did have a lot of people, you know, not embrace me. So that was also very hard, because then I was thinking, I was so insecure, and I was thinking, am I ruining his ministry? Am I stopping him? Like, what's the right thing? Am I just supposed to stay home with the kids? And then if I did do that, I'd be really resentful. I'd be like, I didn't get married to stay home with 5 kids while you're off around the world being like the dude, you know? Like,
I ain't staying in no kitchen.
Well, I do like to cook, but I'm not doing the dishes after I
You're going to tell when she goes in the kitchen.
And that was really tough. And, you know, obviously just blending 5 kids anyway is tough.
Oh, yeah.
It does take time.
Yeah, it took time. I think it probably took us, to be honest, 3 years.
Yeah.
To really hit our straps where we felt like we had a family identity.
Yeah.
We understood each other.
We understood each other's kids.
Each other's kids. I mean, I would say blending families. I mean, when we got married, Cristie had her 2 beautiful girls full time. I had my 2 boys and daughter full time. So it was instant 5-kid family.
And they were all teenagers bar one.
All bar one.
You know,
so it's
even more fun.
Easy.
It wasn't easy, but you know what? God's got a way, and we've even had times where we've sat there and thought, you know what? They all get on better than some kids that were all in a perfect situation.
Without fluffing over it, it was super hard.
It was hard at the start.
It was
very hard at the start.
Super duper hard. I even had a little breakdown and went and had a little retreat, because
nice way of putting
I'm a high achiever and I like to do everything really well, and it was way beyond me, you know. And it was a really tough season, and plus also we had the whole his ministry and how did that look, and we couldn't go together because we had the kids, and nobody wants to look after 5 kids, you know. So it was an interesting season, but I think it changed. You know, it changed when I had a revelation of what my part was in it for myself. And because, you know, for the first few years I'd go out for prayer and at Pastor Margaret's church and stuff, and I just wanted someone to lay hands on me and say, you've got a ministry, and and nobody did. And I was like, God, what's going on? Where am I supposed to be? Have I got this wrong? And I was always questioning it. And I think it was 3 years ago, I think at the ICFM I had a real encounter with God, and I was like, I know who I am, and I know what I'm supposed to do, and it doesn't matter to me if anyone else sees it or not. I'm going to do it. And I think that's when, as far as our ministry, got easier for me, because I stopped questioning if I'm holding it back. If I'm,
I think everything gets better when you know, when you have that security, because of how it works in your relationships and everything like that.
But now, you know, now we've got 3 kids out of home, only 2 kids at home, only 1 without a license. So quickly it changed. When we were in it, we just couldn't. I couldn't, because I'm an in-the-moment sort of girl. I couldn't see out of it how it would be any different. And a few years later, you know, we're off for a week at a time, or if the longer we take a kid with us, big deal. You know, it's pretty great.
Things to look forward to.
What did you say?
I was saying things to look forward to. I've nearly got rid of 1. I just got a few more to go.
I'm just starting this thing.
On your own, I can just imagine.
We buy KFC and eat the whole bucket by ourselves.
I buy a whole bucket and William eats it by himself.
No, it is interesting that discovering it for yourself.
Well,
the effect that makes.
I think that's important. I've sort of felt that way too. We want other people to validate our ministry, right, and come and say, I know, but then it's on them. Then it's you're doing. Sometimes you could be responding to someone else. It's got to be in you, and you always want someone to see it in you. And there are people who are encouraging and ministry people who see certain things in you and that, but no one outright says this is what you're meant to do. That's got to happen in here, because you got to have confidence in God, not in someone else's relationship with God, if that makes sense.
That's right.
There are people out there that tell you after you say it.
Yeah,
that's okay. Thanks for that.
I knew that all along.
I knew. But it's so true.
For a lot. Sorry,
you're gone.
All I was about to say is I've ministered for a lot of Bible school graduations, and I sort of do it tongue in cheek, but I encourage the students, because even in a secular situation, people tend to think you do a study, you get a degree, you go straight into that workforce. It doesn't always happen like that, because I used to see at Rhema people they'd finish their course, then think, okay, it's just going to happen for me, and go nearly into like a wilderness thing and get mad at, say, maybe the church or the leaders going, well, why aren't you making this happen to me? But I saw that just what we were saying, until they get that revelation, what Cristie got, that it doesn't matter if no one else can recognize this. I know what I'm called to do.
Yeah.
And like you said, if it comes to a place, you finish Bible school, okay, I put you in a position, I anoint you, I am your security. Well, when things get tough, it's very easy for you to believe, you know what, Pete made a mistake. But when you get that revelation for yourself, when times get tough, no one can steal that from you.
Yeah.
It's good.
That's your right. That's a part of your identity now. And so,
and you need that, honestly, in ministry, as you guys would know.
You totally
need to hear it from God, because
you even read in the Bible. You look at our heroes of faith. There's moments of high prominence and blessing. Then there's big seasons of their life where it doesn't look like there's as much happening. And
we just flick over those verses.
Sort of person, sort of think. If your security is just purely in what people think about you, and you're opening to a realm of discouragement.
Yep. Our anchor has to be in God.
No one can steal that.
Our anchor has to be in God. When the storms arise, if it's in someone else, there's no strength there. There's no hope
that's right.
in them. Yeah, has to be in
storms
them.
arise.
No, it does for sure. Now, I've really, that's when, and I think for young people too, that's the struggle part, when you're sort of on that teenagers going into.
He said young people like he's old. Did you pick that up? Yeah. Just like, those young people.
That struggle at the start, you're just thinking, you're trying to find your feet and you're not sure whether what you're doing is correct. But that sort of switch goes and you become confident in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then because you know that's what you're supposed to be doing, you you stop that trying to, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? What do you think of this? What do you think of this? After a moment, there comes a time where it's like, no, you know that you're supposed to be doing it, just go out and do it. But it's getting to that stage that to have that. I think
it's on the inside of you for a while, and I'm sure it would have been for yourself, Cristie. But there's it can be there, but you doubt it all the time.
Yes,
until you get confidence in it,
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. Like it is what you believe the Lord's, but no one's confirmed it, or no one's. You need them to validate it rather than God validating it. That's who you are. So
And did it was the big change when you come into the ministry? Pastors were shocked that Pete was organised and got emails.
I think people were more shocked that I could actually sing.
Yeah.
I think because a lot of places we went, people afterwards, because I said to Peter, "Are you telling them that I'm coming?" And he's like, "I don't care if I'm coming, you're coming. We'll just rock up."
Yeah.
And so we'd go, and Peter would be like, "Oh, I need a microphone for Cristie," and they'd be like, "Oh." And afterwards, people would say, "Oh, that sounded really nice."
Because there's been heaps of ministries in the past that have brought along their partners to sing.
Yeah.
And wish they hadn't.
Yeah.
And Cristie was one that was like, oh, you're better than him.
Yeah.
Next time. We'll just say,
Nobody said that.
Oh, Pete, you don't have to do the instrumental again this time.
He's working on an instrumental now.
Can I say, just to back a bit, we talked about getting it in you.
Mm-hmm.
Once Cristie did that, people really embraced you.
I know.
Now it's like there's been just the odd time where just, life happens and I've gone to a church without her. They're really disappointed. And they've even said, when you come back next time, we don't want a date that doesn't include your wife. And so
that's been really nice.
Yeah. So when she got it in her heart, all of a sudden that confirmation from other people came.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think as
Or
well
either that, or you're more open to hearing it.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It's once you get that, you're the way you minister changes.
Yeah.
Which then people actually
true.
see it. You have to have it first, though.
Yes.
I wish it was the other way.
Yeah. True.
It's like that. But thank you guys for
Yeah.
joining us.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. We thank you out of your busy schedule for joining us.
No worries.
We love you guys. You guys are like friends to us. Well, not like friends. You are friends.
You're the closest thing to a friend that's not a friend. That's
No, you guys are friends to us. More
you resemble it.
What I was meaning. You resemble it.
Don't be rude.
What I was meaning was that it's not just knowing you guys through ministry, that you guys are, it's a friendship with you guys, and we really appreciate it. We enjoy chatting with you.
I think you've brought some really good insights for people, not just
absolutely.
as I know we talked a lot on ministry, that's because we all are in ministry and something that we do and we get together, but they're really practical things there that can really be applied to things outside of that, and even in work and relationships and stuff like that, about coming together and the unity. It was a fairly common theme, which we're seeing in a lot of the podcasts. That
Talking about their ministries, have you got their web
I
pages
do
and
here.
links and things?
We'll put some links on the thing, but it's worshipministriesinternational.com. I'm assured by Peter it's .com. There's a question from Cristie, maybe it's .org, but maybe try both and see what this is .com. Okay, we checked.
She checked.
Sorry.
Very good. And so, but yeah, check out their instrumental is recommended.
Did you say there's a new one coming out soon?
There's a new one coming?
The new one.
Wait,
coming out
our
soon.
singing ones are good too.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, yeah.
Yeah.
The ones
If I do say so myself.
the ones that are Christie's on, check out those ones.
Yeah. I would go with that. Christie's on.
Your devotion one is beautiful.
Oh, okay.
That's good.
No, but the guys are all on the socials, as the
Yep.
kids say these
On the
days.
socials.
On the socials.
On the facey.
Yeah.
No, but they've, search Worship Ministries International.
Peter and Cristie
if
Robertson.
If you haven't heard their music before, it is very good. Very, very good. I thoroughly enjoy it.
And if you are...
Says our really good friend.
I'm not going to live that down now.
Yeah.
Christie's going to be like, you do not think of us as friends.
Yes. Peter is a fond acquaintance.
Fond acquaintance.
yeah. But if you are a church out there that's listening, invite them along. They're recommended.
They're doing online guest speaking at the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe after this is over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys do a bit of work with churches and worship teams and stuff as well, don't you? Like, so working with the teams and putting structures
do
in
a lot of
place
that.
and
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. So if you're keen on that, definitely worth an email to these guys too.
Absolutely. Definitely get them.
Amen.
Thank you all for listening, guys.
Thank you so much for joining. Don't forget to subscribe.
Oh, we put it in. Good job.
Got it in there.
Woo.